Hello and welcome to the series Starting a New Business. Today we are going to be focusing on tips for starting a new business, which is module 1. We are doing this series for the American Indian College Fund, and it is being funded by the Native American Ag Fund. Today, Ruby Ward and I are your hosts. Ruby Ward is an economic professor at Utah State University. I am Vicki Hebb. I'm a member of the Cheyenne River Sioux tribe in South Dakota. My husband and I are ranchers here, and I also am on faculty at the University of Nevada, Reno. And not able to join us today is Trent Tigerstrom, who is the Associate Director of Tribal Extension at the University of Arizona. I also want to remind you that we have note-taking and a key for that note-taking that we encourage you to print out and follow along as we go through this. We will be asking questions relevant to what we are teaching so that you will have that note-taking to be able to help you after this workshop is over.
So this is a 4-module series, and this is the first one, tips for starting a new business. And then there's 3 others. And so the other ones are going to be on loans and credit, establishing credit and starting your own business. And then we're going to have MyFi app. That's a free app that's available on Apple and Google Play, the Apple Store or Google Play. And it's really to kind of help you calculate your own loans and other types of financial literacy. And then we're also going to have a final 4th module on financial growth and management. So that's kind of really putting your financial plan together once we have all those basics. But today it's going to be tips for starting a new business. And so are you ready to start a business? And so these are just kind of some of those things for how you can get started. Are you ready to get started? You got your plans in place. And we've got some resources for you for either starting your own business or helping others to get started. And Vicki, have people come to you in the past and said, you need to help me, I'm going to start my own business. And do they have a plan in place?
So many times, Ruby. It's incredible how overwhelming it can be to start a business. And so you always have people that are wanting us to do their business plans. And it's absolutely impossible because we don't know their plan. We don't know their product. And so what we're trying to do here is simplify this process so it doesn't seem overwhelming and so that you can do your own business plan.
So we've got kind of 2 sets of resources that we're not going to go through everything today in this module because you wouldn't want to be here that long with us. But we're going to show you how to use these and what they are. Like what's the concept behind them, how you would use them either for yourself or with somebody else. And so as Vicki said, sometimes you can't do somebody else's plan because they don't know their plan. And sometimes if it's you don't know your plan yet either because you haven't considered everything. And so this is how to kind of some resources to try to help you pull that together a little bit. So they start out with the pre-business checklist, and we'll go over that a little bit. And then also we've got some guidebooks that are questions to go through to really kind of to spur your ideas and kind of let you coalesce that idea into one. And they're going to have some business planning questions and some about marketing strategy. And both of the guidebooks and the pre-business checklist are available for you to download and use. And so we'll give you more details on that. But let's first start with the pre-business checklist. So before you build your financial future, and that's really why you're starting a business, right? It's about you building your financial future. Then you want to make sure your personal and financial standing, your personal life and your personal finances are stable, or they're in a place where it's going to be easier to start that business. And so there's things that we consider there: personal health, your finance, and then what your idea is. So those are kind of the 3 prongs that we look at as a pre-business checklist. And we've got a resource for you that you can use. And just as a tip, you've got the arrows down there with the tip, or the feathers down there with the tip. This is a great place to start with a client because, as Vicki said, sometimes people come to you, you don't know anything about them, you don't know their plan and stuff. And so kind of starting out with the pre-business checklist can be a way to really kind of get to know them. They can get to know you and get started with that process. So it starts out with some questions on personal health. So these are one of the main considerations there. Am I healthy and physically able? Running a business takes time and it takes effort and it takes your energy. And so if you're in a place in your life where you're having a lot of health issues or physical issues, you may need to focus on that part of your life, and get yourself healthy first before starting a business. But maybe during that time, you can work on getting your business plans in place so that when you do get your health and the other things ready, then you're kind of in a place to really get started. A support system. How much do you use your family as a support system for yourself, Vicki?
Oh, so much. It takes all of us. As the saying goes, it takes a village. So you definitely want to make sure that you have a good support system, that you have discussed this with your immediate family. And
Vicki, you told them you worked at University of Nevada, Reno, but what is your family's business?
So they know a little bit more about you. Yes, so we're in central South Dakota on a ranch, and we're third generation buck and horse breeders, and we also do a cow-calf operation. So my 9 to 5 is working for University of Nevada, Reno, and then I go out after that and feed. And every weekend I work my second job, which is ranching, because so much of what happens on the ranch involves all of us, which is only 3 of us here. It's me, my husband, and my daughter. But there's so many things on a ranch, so my husband just can't do alone. And so it definitely takes a commitment. And I will tell you, hours and hours of working when you probably don't want to be, but the reward pays off. So just remember that and keep that in mind.
So also, is my personal health life at a point where I'm not experiencing or expecting any life-changing events? So life-changing events are things like you're having a child, you're going to get married, you're getting a divorce, you've got something else that really kind of impacts your life. During those periods, it takes a lot of time and energy to kind of deal with those life-changing events. And so it's not always a good time to have extra energy to be able to do in a business. So I have an example here that's not my personal health, but my dad is 84 years old and he broke his ankle in August, and it was non-weight bearing for 8 weeks. And he was not good on a scooter or something else in the beginning. So I needed to go spend a lot of time there. And so I was able to work remotely, stay with my parents a lot, but that would not have been a good time for me to try to be able to do anything with a business outside of, those types of things. Because that really was a period of my life where I really needed to just focus on helping them. And so you may have some of those types of issues too that you need to consider. Finances is another one of those areas. So do I have a good or excellent credit score? This is a way a credit score kind of measures what the risk is of lending you money. And we're going to go over that in module 2 and give you some resources around it. Is my personal debt manageable? Am I in an industry or demographic that would qualify for specialized loans or grants? Vicki, you have some experience, and so.
Yes, so this is a big one. As Native Americans, there are programs and resources that we will be giving you in module 2 that are specific to tribal members. And, for me, my example with ranching is that we qualify for underserved communities for FSA. And so we were able to get a loan through FSA at a very low interest rate, which you will learn in our upcoming module that interest rate is everything. And so it really is in getting ahead versus not getting ahead because you're paying so much interest. So this one is a key, and especially to this audience at American Indian College Fund. As you're helping your clients, if this is what you're going to do, or if you are the person starting a business, you do have an advantage, and there are resources out there.
The other thing is with your personal debt, I have seen so many people try to start a business when they already had a lot of credit card debt, and then they were going to just put more credit card debt to start their business. And it really just put them in a situation that it was almost impossible for anybody to have made that work just because of, those. And so sometimes it's going to be easier to really focus on, maybe getting that personal debt under control before trying to add the business side of it to it, because the business is going to come with its own financial risks and unexpected things that are going to happen. So there are other resources available for financial readiness. We're going to show you again, there's module 2, we're going to have a lot more information. and stuff, but this is just to get people started thinking about it. So in addition to the pre-business plan checklist, we also have these, we're calling them guidebooks to starting different types of businesses. And so each one is going to have around 10 questions, maybe a couple more, a couple less. And it's going to be things unique to those. For example, like a food business, there's some food regulations that from the Food and Drug Administration, or the FDA. And so we're going to include some of those types of things. For livestock, you've got some special considerations, like your livestock are going to need land, and they're going to need a way to be fed, and they're, you know what I mean? So just some of those types of things, some equipment you might need for livestock. And so, but we've got questions to ask when starting or selling a product, selling a service. So a product is going to be something physical. A service is going to be like washing windows, mowing lawns, cutting hair, anything that you're, you know, it's your time to do something for somebody. And then a cosmetic business, if you use something like goat's milk or some type of a food ingredient in your cosmetics, then there's special considerations through there. It's actually FDA regulated. And so that's going to have some questions and some information about that. And so those are the guidebooks that we have at this point. We may expand those in the future, but these are the ones that we have right now. So Vicki, take it away and tell us about some of the business planning questions.
Absolutely. So this has been a fun one to get to know. When Ruby and I first started talking about business planning questions, I was like, oh, I have this friend and she's going to be the perfect example of a simple way to demonstrate the questions you need to ask yourself. However, once I talked to her, it's so much more than I ever thought. So what is your big idea? Is there anything unique about it? You will see the quills on the side of the picture of the quills on the side. These are my friends. She does everything with the quill work jewelry. She plucks the porcupine, you know, she said it. I mean, she gets done, her hands are bleeding. She dyes her own quills. She has to buy leather. She has to buy rawhide. And this isn't even, you know, starting the quilling process. It is super important to realize what your niche in that is going to be. You know, for her work is super good because she does them so tight, and that's a really big deal in quill jewelry. Why do people need or want it? Now, you know, Ruby and I were just talking about this. You know, maybe it does, maybe it doesn't solve a problem or need, and maybe it does. But such as jewelry, that's a mental health issue. That's a, you know, let's feel good about ourselves, right, Ruby? I mean, Ruby loves Native American jewelry. Yes.
Yeah, so sometimes we just need something that we can really have in our lives, that we appreciate the artistry and the work that goes into it. And so I think that part of Vicki's friends, you know, the quill work is that she's doing it from the very beginning to the very end. She's, you know, getting the porcupine needles, the quills herself, she's dyeing them, she's doing all that product. So that's her idea, that I'm going to make really good jewelry with, and I'm going to control everything along that. So I know where the quills came from, I know what's been done to them, and I have the whole product. If you're doing, but you can also have a business like washing windows. And so that's a problem, that people need to have their windows clean, you know, and everybody has windows. So that's something that they need to have happen. So it really, you know, kind of, it can be anything here. So yeah, so just
I love that. Yeah, I love that example, because you go to who's your customer. And honestly, with Ruby's example with the window washing, excuse me, and you know, everyone has windows. So you are 100% addressing a need for everyone. So that's important. Now, if it's quill work, you know, your customer might be a different group of people. Ruby and I were talking earlier about, I have a couple of Native American artist friends, and one's a painter and the other's this, she does the quill work. And it's very common, not just in Native Americans, but to undervalue your work, because a lot of times maybe you're selling to your own people. But I also have a colleague that is very interested in the artist's painting, that I think she would, you know, undervalue her work. And so it's a process of knowing how to price things, and doing the math. So it's not a feeling like you don't deserve that much or your product isn't worth that much, but rather doing the math so you know how much to charge. So ultimately you make
And how
a
will you
profit.
reach, and I think this how you will reach them kind of goes into that same type of thing, because it may be that if you just are selling to, some of the people that are very, very near to where you are, not everybody needs your service or needs your product. And so it may not be that's who your customer is and who you can sell to make money. You know what I mean? And so for certain types of products, you're going to have to reach out beyond where you live, beyond your, local community and stuff. But for other things like window washing, it very much is, something that you would do right in your community, because it's about your time and where you physically are. And so you just kind of have to think about, who are you trying to sell to? Why might they want to buy it? And then how can you reach them?
Absolutely. Okay, you're developing a marketing strategy is huge. This is how you're going to get your product out there. So this is very important as well. So we go back to, what am I selling? Okay, you're selling a product or a service, but is there a backstory to it? For my friends that are Native American artists, there's a story, and there's a story to their products. My friend that does the quill work, she learned it from her grandmother, and it's just been passed down. And, I think that that is important. Ruby, wouldn't you agree?
Oh, definitely. And so I was working with a guy that was talking about selling cheese of all things, but I really kind of kept with me this example, because he says the way you sell a $20 pound of cheese is, you sell a $10 pound of cheese and a $10 story. And I think a lot of times we can see physically the product, like that cheese that we're selling, but not the story around it, because it's not physical. It's not something we can hold. But at the same time, that's what makes the product come to life. You know what I mean? Especially some of these things that are the artistry in them. You have to sell that story around the artistry. So when somebody sees it, they don't just see the physical thing of the actual physical quill, you know what I mean, and stuff that's there, but also they feel the story that went into it, the process that went into it, the heritage, the history, all of that, and it makes it kind of come to life.
Yes, I love that example. It's perfect. Okay, so our next question to ask ourselves is, who might want it? So if you're the window washer, you're going to be looking at your community, right? Because it's not something, it's a service. So it's a tangible action that you are doing within your community. If it's the earrings, the quill earrings, I mean, that might be some, a certain demographic, but more so it might just be, maybe your focus is on women, but you're still going to want to focus on the men to buy them for the women. So, there's definitely different examples, but you need to identify who your customer is. Where will I sell it? Again, the window washing, you're going to be in your community. If you have a product, it also depends on, is this, cost prohibitive for me to be shipping this? Like, we've done some work with some jelly. Ruby did a whole study on doing jelly at Utah State University. And, sometimes if someone doesn't purchase enough, I mean, that's going to be a cost that you're going to have to pass on to the customer, so that you're still making a profit. But other things that are lighter, that are easier to ship, I think that, that is easily shipped and can be done that way. Are you going to have a storefront? Are you going to have an actual store? I mean, that's something to consider, and something that you have to look at within your cash flow budget when we get to that later. How can I let people know I have it? We were just talking about this, and there's just so many creative ways. I think this is where you have to get creative. If we go back to the window washer example, we were talking about like putting up flyers with the numbers on it, and going to like Home Depot, to Lowe's, to your church. Your history of excellence in what you do will be your promoter and marketing. And so we also talked about really needing to do like some business cards so that maybe they can pass it along. Ruby, any other ideas on this one?
Yeah, I think that you want to make your current customers or the people that you know your ambassadors, you know, and so if you did a really good job for them, but they don't know how to keep track, refer you to somebody else, or how that another person can get a hold of you, it's going to make it hard for them to be your ambassador. But like giving them some extra business cards or some way that they have that they can easily refer people to you, is you just want to make that process easier. So how can you make it easy for them to help you, is what I kind of think about. And what connections do you have? Everybody's going to be different, you know, but just use the connections you have.
Absolutely. And in this day and age, social media is huge on this as well. I just had some chinks made for my husband from a leather maker, native leather maker. And, you know, for me, I love them. So I went on to both Instagram and Facebook and showed a picture of him in them and promoted, you know, this leather maker that I got them from. And, you know, ultimately that's what you want, word of mouth.
Yep.
Okay, the last one here is, can I get them to buy my product and make money? So we are going to address this more in depth in the next modules, including the MyFi app, where you will be able to easily know what you are looking at for expenses and put it into a calculator. Ruby, thoughts on this one? I mean, this one's a tough one because no one likes to work for free.
Well, and that's the thing to keep in mind, that you're going to be putting a lot of time and effort into this. And so if you don't make money, you're paying for the privilege of putting all that time and effort into doing that. Where instead, you know, and that's more of like a hobby, you know, you're willing to pay money to go, you know, do something that's your hobby. Like if I was going to go ski, I'm willing to pay the lift ticket because I want to go skiing. If I'm going to go to a rodeo, I'm going to pay for the privilege of having that experience. But do you want your business to be something you're going to pay for the experience, the privilege of being able to work in your business? You know, that's not really a business, that's a hobby. And so we want to really kind of have the business be paying us for our time and effort. So, so as we said that we have these guidebooks that we've put together. This is one for the livestock. It's got a cover page, it's got an inside cover, and then it's got these other pages that look like this. And at the top, they're going to have your main question. What's the big point? And for this one, for livestock, it's, do I own or have access to land? And then it's going to have an explanation. Why is this important? So, well, you need to have a place to keep your animals, or you can't have animals. And then then it gives you a little bit more information, maybe some questions to kind of spur your ideas, your thinking, to get just a little more depth in your thinking. So in this case, like, can you make decisions on that land, or do you just have access to it? Because you have to be able to make decisions for that land too. Is there a cattle association or a grazing permit required? And so is it going to be difficult to get it? You know, just think about what your access to water, you know, all of these things, not just having the physical land, but all these other things around having that land. And then it's going to give you an example. And so in this case, my parents are going to add me to my tribal lease, which allows me to make decisions on this land easily. I need to check if there's a livestock association on the reservation and join if there is. So that's the example. So it gives you like just a little short example that you can kind of see what we're after here. A status check. So is it a yes? Is it a no? Is it a maybe? So is this something you've got locked down? You really know what you're going to do? Is this something? No, I have no clue. Is this something I've got to get figured out? Or is this, I've got some of my stuff together, but I'm still kind of working on it. Your plan, you know, sketch out your ideas here. And I really kind of think of these guidebooks as sketchbooks to just kind of sketch out your ideas. You don't need to know everything up front, but what's your plan? And then it's also got a space for your next step. Because as we go through this, you're not going to have everything together. And even if it's something we know what we're going to do, there probably still is a next step. And so this can give you your sketched out your ideas, but also the list of things that you can work on. So as you go through here, you have kind of an action list that you can work on. And if you're working with somebody else, this can be really powerful, because then it's not just kind of what's happening with you there at that time, but it also gives them places where this is the list now that I can go start working on for the next bit. And I know kind of where I'm going to go and what I'm going to do with it.
I feel like that keeps the new business startup going, because you kind of have a follow-up task, which is super important so you don't get overwhelmed.
Yep. And this also lets you to just kind of, if you have a list of things, take it piece by piece. And
yes,
so instead
absolutely.
of like getting it all at once. So the resources, the pre-business checklist we talked about, and all of these guidebooks are available on diversag.org. A precursor to this is quite a few years ago now, we developed a 2-module series that was meant to be the PowerPoints there to be used as a curriculum. So it has PowerPoints, it has the objectives and some other resources there. Money management is personal financial management. Business management is more of this, but in depth. We developed an app, MyFi Assist, that's for free, and we'll go into that in a future module. And then we did a financial health webinar series that's on the Arizona Tribal Extension website, and the URL is here. And you'll also have that URL in a list of resources that we have attached to this module. So I'm not going to read out the whole extension there, but that one of those webinars, it was like an 8-part series, and one of them was just going over that livestock guidebook. But that series was very livestock oriented, and so this one's a little bit more pared down to just a few more of the basics, but also broader in the scopes of types of businesses that we're looking at. And so conclusion, possibilities exist, but it's not always easy.
It's tough. You gotta want to do this, but take it step by step.
You don't have to know everything up front. Like Vicki said, take it step by step, keep refining that plan, make it more and more your own. Creative, you know what I mean? Like Vicki talked about being creative in your marketing, you need to be creative in your plan. And because you need to be creative, we can't tell you this is the plan that everybody should pursue with this type of business. You really have to create your own with your own creativity and your own ideas. And remember, you need to make a profit. That's kind of the whole goal of doing your business.
Absolutely. That's the most important part. And we'll get into that more in the next 3 modules.
Yep. So as we said, this was the first module, tips for starting a new business and putting those plans in place. We're also going to be doing over the loans, the app, and then financial growth, putting that kind of financial plan together once you have some basics. So we hope to see you in the next module 2.
Yes, thank you so much for your time today. We know it's valuable, and we hope you enjoyed our workshop.